Okay, well, I think we're going to get started. I know we're only a few minutes in, but we have so much to cover today, and
Okay.
I'm really excited about it. So I think we'll dive in, and if there are a few others who come join us a little later on, that'll be great. And I'll monitor this little fancy liveness. I wonder how many people are able to catch us on the other side. So, um, I guess let's dive in. So, hi everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so happy to have you all here for our latest episode of Turnaround Tuesdays, our new business podcast for 2025, where we promise you no fluff, no jargon, no slides, just real talk and tips and turnarounds. I'm Alexandra Capellas Peters, the founder and CEO of Cansulta. And for those of you who don't know us, we are a global consulting hub. We connect organizations of all shapes and sizes to our trusted consultants and our experts in many business areas, including strategy, finance, marketing, IT, technology. I can't remember them all. Unlike traditional firms, we have combined top tier experts like Graeme, who can deliver fast, affordable, and flexible services for your needs. So, why we created this podcast is to narrow the gap from some of the heavier kind of academic and theoretical podcasts that we had been listening to that seemed a little bit too academic, sometimes a little bit too fluffy. And our goal here today and with all of our episodes is to be a bit different and to share with you real world strategies and stories so that we hope that after today's session, you can go back to your company, your organization, and put those tips to use right away. So every other week, we will feature a consultant or expert, such as Graeme, and dig into some of the practical ways that you can strengthen your business. So before we dive right into all the goodness, I want to just share three of the things that you can look to walk away with today. First of all, we have a guide, which is our gift to you. So this is a guide that we've created following some of Graham's direction and approach, and we'll talk a bit more about that after. That's how to transform your brand. Um, and so that's a digital guide that we'll share with you at the end of the session. We also invite you, of course, to book time to meet with Graham. And so you can discuss your own brand, your own company, your own kind of challenges and needs one on one. And finally, we will also be extending an offer to benefit from our new business health audit at a significant discount. So that's a new service we've launched that is a series of assessments that will help you take a closer look at your business and its kind of weak spots and where it could use some help. So those three things are coming your way. You don't need to worry about notes or keeping track of anything. The session is being recorded, and we will share the link to the recording as well as to those three items that will all be available to you in a day or two after this session. So you don't need to get stressed about about anything. We hope you're just going to listen. For those of you who are live with us in Zoom, you we have reserved time for your questions. So we'll invite you near the end of the session to bring up your own questions. And again, you'll also be able to book some time with Graham if you have things that are specific to your company that you want to talk about. So, without further ado, let's dive in. And I will take a minute to introduce today's guest, Graham. I'm so excited to introduce him to you. Graham is a very seasoned entrepreneur. He's a consultant, a strategist. He's got so many titles, I can't remember them all. With more than 25 years of experience in building, growing, and selling companies in such a remarkable range of industries from cannabis to sports, music, events, energy, and more I couldn't even remember. He's successfully launched and scaled ventures, taken companies public, and advised countless startups on how to move from their scrappy beginnings to sustainable enterprise ready businesses. As CEO of Solomon Energy, he led international projects focused on solar farms and energy storage. He's also the founder of multiple ventures, including Civilized Productions, Raw Energy, and he's built brands that have left their mark on everything from alternative energy to the music industry. Along the way, he's worked with global corporations and again, scrappy startups like us. And he's seen firsthand how branding can really make or break their growth. What makes Graeme so unique is his ability to translate all of these decades of real world experience into practical advice for entrepreneurs and executives alike. He's passionate about showing leaders that branding isn't just about logos and campaigns. It's about clarity, consistency, and alignment across your vision, mission, values, and every single customer and employee interaction, which we so often forget. So please join me in welcoming Graeme. Graeme, thank you so much for being here with us today. And over to you to get us going.
Thanks very much, Alex. That was a great introduction. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to see over the years how you've grown Consulta from something that was relatively local to something that's become really globally known, quite frankly. We do have people joining us from around the world today, for example. Um, but keeping focused, um, there's a couple of buzzwords that I thought was relatively unique, I suppose, in reading what you had prepared for me a while back, and said, "Are you prepared to discuss these types of topics?" And of course, I am, because there's a lot of um, relationships, if you will, that are established along the way. And some of the things that are consistent in those relationships is the management of time.
Mm,
And a lot of people ask me, because I mainly get approached these days to help people write their business plan. And then ultimately to launch the actual business itself. So one of the things that I find that tends to get overlooked is the brand, or the aspect of branding and the elements of branding that come cohesively together to enable, if you will, people to get things done in a very timely fashion, including the top executives in the corporation, to the people who are in the warehouse or the front-facing salespeople. And I found that whether I'm dealing with big corporations or small startups, it's that element of time that I find really important in terms of answering the question, why should I
mm,
consider a brand? I know what the name of my company is. I know what uh, this logo means to me. So what else do I really need to know about branding? I mean, this is it to me. And from the top down over the years, I've met some very stubborn and obstinate people who have run companies who do not want to change either their name or their brand if it has simply come, for example, from the top of their heads. One of the things I like to do, and what I learned early on in my business career while working with advertising agencies, is in the creation of that brand, which involves the integration of so many different elements, that the brand isn't just a logo and it isn't just a
mm,
tagline. It's an all-encompassing variety of aspects that need to be determined in advance, need to be discussed. They need to be defined and developed. So, someone might come up with a really uh, creative idea, but it needs to be talked about. It needs to be formulated. It needs to be dropped down onto paper in order to make other people's jobs in the company uh, much easier to do. And one of the good examples in terms of the conversations that I've had with people is, for example, when your company grows and you begin to hire more creative people, not just marketing people, but
mm,
within that marketing umbrella, you will have creative directors and people who are involved in whether it be creating, for example, banners for your trade show, or posters that might be put up across town, or advertisements in magazines, or television ads. Uh, all these things realistically need to be consistent and convey that message of why people customers should trust that brand just upon seeing, say, for example, the logo or that great tagline that they have come up with. So I would like to, in hopefully, today's time with you, Alex, discuss the importance of not just creating a set of brand guidelines, which ultimately gets built upon and delivered mainly to the creative teams. It's called a brand Bible, and it's very thick and it's very expensive to build because it does take a lot of time. But what it does do is it saves a lot of time as the company grows for those people who need to make effective and creative decisions. So, and just by example, those decisions will involve the speech writers. So not all top executives write their own speeches if they're giving a speech at a trade show or a conference. They'll have people within their group who will actually write those speeches for them, or talking points, for example. But these have to be consistent with what is contained within the set of brand guidelines that they've agreed upon, and not necessarily upon the launch of the company, because when companies do get launched, it's not necessarily the first focus or area of uh, an area that really does concern the CEO or the person who has launched the company to begin with. His or her main area of focus is revenue. And at the moment in time when they launch, they don't necessarily see the correlation between brand and revenue. But it is important, it is critical because it ultimately leads to trust. And that's what you really want from your customers. You want them to trust the brand. And that brand, as I said, is expressed in many, many, many different ways across a spectrum of activity. And it's those touch points, whether it's internal or external, that are critical to success of any company. And that's why I'm so gung-ho to talk about brand.
Yeah. And I think, Graham, what's interesting about your experience too, I don't know if we mentioned it yes today, is that you have kind of experience on both sides of that spectrum, both as being the founder entrepreneur, as well, I guess, as being in the middle, being an advisor and a consultant, and then also running your own ad agency. And so, you have this kind of unique perspective for everyone joining us that I think is really special because it gives us a different view, to your point, on the importance of brand at all of those different levels. So can maybe we can share a couple examples when you kind of like think back and look back at some of the ventures that you launched yourself or some that you've kind of seen grow over the years. You know, can we talk a little bit about how the brand itself was really instrumental or really important in watching that businesses grow as they kind of evolved from those startups onward?
Sure. I'd be happy to share a personal experience. When I launched one of my own companies back in 1989, I launched a company called Raw Energy, and I'd originally envisioned it to simply be a music-specific company, a company that created music and sold music traditionally in what were called record stores uh, on a global level. And quite frankly, I never considered brand. It was just one of those jump in, sink or swim kind of decisions, born of time and circumstance. And at the end of the day, after 10 years, I was successful in releasing over 50 albums in 23 different countries around the world. But more importantly, I had grown from simply a music producer or a production house or a facility that simply tossed music into record stores, but had grown to become recognized and valued as a brand of entertainment by an entire population identified as skateboarders, snowboarders, or wakeboarders across the 90s. And we were very successful in launching other areas of entertainment, not just music, but for example, live shows or radio shows, which eventually led to an online radio show that we had. And we're
Hmm.
certainly one of the first companies to deliver live music online to a global audience,
Wow.
which leads me to another kind of funny story about virtually, we might get into that in a second when it comes to CEOs and their egos. But at the end of the day, uh, there's an example of, a young entrepreneur starting off, walking one way, and all of a sudden, due to the growth of the company, all of a sudden was presented many different opportunities, but kept the brand consistent and identifiable and unique to a specific audience by recognizing what they were valuing in our proposition. And these are important, I'm going to say buzzwords again, that we have within the brand guidelines. Ultimately, a couple of years after the birth of the so-called .com, I got involved with another company and got involved with the very traditional process of growing a set of brand guidelines. And that process was introduced to me by professionals who did work at advertising agencies and who did know the proper, if you will, format
Mm.
to present that will enable that consistency and enable that growth and success of any brand once these key critical areas have been identified and addressed, defined and delivered. So, yeah, I mean, from my own personal experience, yeah, I grew from what I would consider a very small concept to a very large concept, but it took 10 years and it took a team. It wasn't an individual effort. But at the end of the day, we were certainly trusted by a generation to produce not only great music, but great video product, great tours and shows and events, great merchandise. And again, these would have been things that in retrospect I would have put into the brand guidelines if I'd been smart enough to create one myself in those early days. But it was only upon bumping into people over the years who were smarter than me and recognized the importance of a set of brand guidelines for new companies. But not only that, but also as you pointed out in this particular headline, evolving from, a Scrappy. And quite frankly, a lot of people will ask me to this very day, what the heck was I thinking launching a company like Raw Energy, which was releasing uh, punk music and ska music, which has a very niche audience. What were you thinking? Because that audience does not have money typically, which is how we somewhat morphed, if you will, from our target audience being the quote unquote punk market to the skateboard market, which actually did have, well, they didn't have money, but their parents had money. So, being able to tap into that audience was simply uh, luck and timing, to be blunt. Being lucky enough to be introduced to people who are in the industry and recognizing that our music, the punk, the ska, and some of the heavier bands actually resonated. So that was really important to me to have those people tell me, "Hey, Graeme, this is an opportunity you might want to look at." Because it's something that you are appealing to, or your brand is appealing to. And at that point, it's like, what? I've developed a brand that's recognized, that's trusted, and known around the world. Wow, that's cool. So from my own perspective, yeah, I began to listen to these people. Then after the .com, I'll skip a couple of interesting stories, and if you want me to bring those back in, I will. But I ended up working for a variety of different ad agencies, eventually creating my own ad agency and working with specifically young entrepreneurs, small businesses who did have great ideas but didn't understand the value of brand or the brand proposition that they were creating inherently in releasing a specific product to a specific target market. I hope that
So
answers your question.
yeah, when so many opportunities there to talk about it. And maybe Graham, just to like clarify, I think you already kind of covered it, but just to, differentiate for those of us who aren't as familiar. Um, you mentioned like the brand Bible. We've talked about the brand guidelines versus guides. Can you just give a quick kind of overview of like the difference between these different pieces?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm glad you brought that up because I probably would have forgotten about that point that I'd mentioned. Realistically, when you are launching a company or evolving during the business life cycle, as many of you probably already know, there's an introductory phase that you go through. It's very expensive because you want to get to that level where you're able to compete. Um, and when you're able to compete, you're into another segment or another phase of that business life cycle called growth. And that's where you need to spend some money on, for example, marketing. And marketing has to be aligned with the brand that you've already established, hopefully. And once you're into that growth stage, and before you hit that what's called or plateau at that maturity stage where you no longer can compete and you're considering what to do in terms of an exit strategy, this again is important when you're talking about brand. So in the early days of launching a business or starting up a business, and you want to talk about your brand, and you go through what we used to do in the ad agency world, and they probably still do, but on a very high level, is bring a team of people, a team of brand experts into your office, into your boardroom, and say to you, well, how do you see yourselves in 5 years as a
Mm,
company? Where do you want to be? Um, how do you want to be perceived by your customers? And ultimately, they would start writing these various adjectives on the walls of your own boardroom. And a week later, would come back to you with a quick little 10-page document that they've compiled, basically a template, and say to you, well, here's how you need to be perceived, and here's why you need to be perceived by your customer, because this is how you see yourself. Do you see yourself as a smart, as an innovative company? Yes, you do. And now this is what you need to use in order to be perceived as a smart and innovative company. And when you get into, again, like I said earlier, saving time for people on your team, when you do grow and you grow your marketing team, you begin to hire people who begin to ask questions. Hey, Graeme, I'm going down to a trade show. How do you want me to represent the company? Should we be wearing suits or
mm,
should we just be wearing a polo shirt? Like, how do you want us to represent the company? And realistically, that will have been addressed in the brand guidelines. So the brand guidelines go through everything from your vision statements, your mission statements, your value statements, your propositions, your brand promise. And this is what the customer would expect of your brand to deliver. So you go through all these various points, and you establish very, very critical points that need to be conveyed, or what we say messaged. And this messaging is important, that it's consistent, whether it's the fellow giving the speech at the end of the day, or the gal who's writing the core messaging on the website, to the people issuing press releases, and talking to people within the media about how the company is growing and why it's growing, and where it's making its impact. So all these people need to be talking from the same page. When it grows from a set of concise brand guidelines that are easy to understand, and my first recommendation to all entrepreneurs is to get a set of brand guidelines created and have your first group of employees read that set of brand guidelines
mm,
so that they know your vision, and what your mission is. And, maybe a few taglines thrown in there so they get an understanding of what the company is, what it represents, who it's speaking to, why it's speaking to those people quite clearly and uniquely. And then it'll delve down and dig deeper into some of the more interesting or intriguing aspects of defining brand. Why are we unique?
mm,
Why do we offer this different perspective that you should pay attention to as opposed to some of the competition that might be out there? So realistically, what happens is as your company grows, you get a creative director coming in onto the team, um, and that creative director will then begin to say, "Well, I noticed that you are involved in." um, creating, you might say something like this. You might say something like, in your mission statement, we intend to be known as a great producer of television shows. Your
Okay.
creative director will come along and say, what kind of television shows? And how do you define great? Uh, because if you go down the various audiences, they may have different definitions of great. And anyway, so the point of the matter is your creative directors and those people who are involved in actually having to establish the brand will look at that and say, we're trying to create a logo. We're trying to decide what colors to use. And, in picking a very vibrant orange or a pastel type of maybe a neutral color, it doesn't quite represent our brand. We don't want to be seen as neutral. We want to be seen as a vibrant company, if in fact we're to be perceived as great. Maybe in that word great, maybe the word brave. We want to be seen as a brave company. So we might want to use a color scheme. So this would be a creative director asking you these questions. And if you're, for example, a CEO, you're an entrepreneur, you've launched your company, you've got a dozen people working for you. You've got partners, you've got stakeholders, you might have investors. You don't necessarily have a lot of time to speak to a creative director who might ask you, we're about to print business cards. Um,
Hmm.
what stock do you want to use? What are you talking about? And and so it's important that these questions be addressed within the brand guidelines. So if you are considering yourself to be a great company, the brand guidelines will help establish the definition of great. If you intend to be globally recognized, it will help you establish on a territory by territory basis or by some kind of unified platform delivered online. Is it going to be through a distribution uh, obtained through a Hollywood company? There are various ways you can help yourself and the company that you've grown without interfering with each other's business, if you will, or taking away their time, their very valuable time, because this document's been delivered. The brand Bible grows because as these answers are delivered. So, for example, one of the questions to the CEO or the entrepreneur might be, should we put the logo in a circle? And uh, and the creative director might want to know, do you want a circle or do you want an egg-shaped circle, a round circle, an oval? What kind of circle do you really want? And someone on the executive team might respond and say, well, I thought we were going more of a rectangular type shape. And then ultimately the creative director would say something like, well, so could we create a rectangle with curved edges, for example? Would that make everyone happy? At the end of the day, and then again, going back to color scheme and tone, and then of course, uh, the text that is used, these are all critical decisions. But again, they must relate back to those brand guidelines and adhere to the brand guidelines that have been established. And believe me, um, I was working with a cannabis grower, quite frankly, who had sorted out a deal with the Ontario government's distribution arm. And the cannabis grower wanted just simply to sell, grow product and sell product. That's it. That's all. He didn't understand the importance of brand and defining his product as different and unique than all the other cannabis product that was out there and being developed, quite frankly, in the market as the market grew once cannabis had been legalized in Ontario, for example. But it was funny when I introduced him to a marketing expert, and this marketing expert asked him a whole series of questions. He goes, and I'll paraphrase quickly. The marketing expert goes, I assume that your brand guidelines have been approved, and upon approval of these brand guidelines, I can then move quickly to determine not just your business cards and not just the layout, but how like I said, the stock, the weight of these business cards. Uh, but and then the color scheme and the fonts that are being used. But I can then migrate very, very quickly into the websites that you need created, or the collateral that you need created, the letterhead that you need created for that collateral, the posters that need to be put up, the advertisements need to be put up. Anyway, the point of the matter is what was happening in the midst of this conversation. I could see that the founder of the company, of this cannabis company, was quickly losing interest. He didn't want to be concerned with all this minutia. He didn't give a shit, quite frankly, about how thick the business card was. He didn't care really about the poster or the advertising or any of the web content that he just assumed would be done. Period. And so ultimately, he told me afterwards he did not want to work with that marketing expert because that marketing expert was too confusing, too confusing. And he never did approve the brand guidelines that we had created for him. And he kind of, to be blunt, went sideways. To be blunt, huh? He went sideways. He completely went sideways. He lost his mission. He couldn't compete in the marketplace as the marketplace was quickly evolving around him. And he lost the opportunity, quite frankly, to open up a chain of well-branded, based on core research, quite frankly. But he lost the opportunity to open up a franchise of well-recognized and trusted cannabis stores, and failed because I think, because there are people out there who won't listen, who don't. Well, I've often said this. Well, first of all, they won't read, but they won't listen. No matter what you present in front of them, I want a comprehensive document. So you give them a 100-page document. Will they even turn that first page? The answer is no. They won't read it because they don't have time. Can I take an hour of your time to explain the brand guidelines? No, I don't have an hour. Do you have 5 minutes? So what can you really convey in 5 minutes that needs to be conveyed and needs to be approved? You need sign off from these decision makers when it comes to that elemental set of brand guidelines. And if you, quite frankly, there are many different varieties of guidelines. I use a pretty easy to understand 10-page document that I found has worked well. People tend to be able to go through a 10-page document relatively quickly and with ease understand the words that are being presented to them. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's nothing too complicated. But ultimately, that does get evolved. If the company grows, and it should, and succeed, it will grow and succeed because of those brand guidelines becoming or evolving into a brand Bible. And when you go to an ad agency and you ask for a brand Bible, in other words, you now want not just these definitions of how you see yourself or how you position the company or how the company needs to be positioned as unique and competitive, but that brand Bible contains all the various fonts and all the various logos, all the various things. Like this is a huge document, and it costs, even in today's dollars, well over $100,000. So most entrepreneurs, most small businesses, can't afford that. They can't rationalize spending 100 grand on a brand Bible. That is incredibly comprehensive and ultimately will only be used by the creative directors of those people. And when you talk about creative directors, if you're talking about a brand that's growing around the world, you will have creative directors in different countries who know their market, who know their advertising space, if you will, and know what they can get away with. And it has to be consistent with, as I said, what's in the brand guidelines, but is presented to them in what's called the brand Bible. I mean, I'm sure there's a more politically correct term these days, but at the end of the day, we call it the brand Bible, and it's a very thick document, and it really is incredibly comprehensive. And not many people, like for example, a creative director will flip to page 63 to get the answer with respect to his or her question about the size of the font, when you're creating business cards, just for example.
Well, it's pretty interesting. I know ours has really grown over the years too, and seeing how, what we talked about as well, how things kind of evolve.
Yeah.
I remember our first version, our Consulta, we have a messaging Bible and brand kit, and it was put together, as you said, by our very talented. We have two, one brand strategist and one copywriter and one creative director, as you mentioned. And it's kind of nice for me actually. It feels a little nostalgic going back because that it was one of the first things that we had built. As you said, like many founders, I think it's kind of your baby and you want to see it brought to life very early on. So it was really one of our kind of first projects. And looking back now, seeing how that evolved from what was probably, as you said, kind of I want to say a 3 or 5 page document that was really, kind of keywords and tone of voice. And now is probably 30 pages, not 100, but 30 now incorporates a lot more of, as you mentioned, kind of examples and the little details of, when to use which logo type and these things that kind of have grown with us. And I only wonder what that will look like, as you said, in another 5 years, if we'll finally make it to the 100 pager that's very comprehensive. So, um,
At,
Graham, when
at
we were
that point,
talking.
sorry, Alex.
Yeah,
At
sure.
that point, we call it thudware because when it lands on the desk,
Yeah.
it creates a thud. Anyway, thudware.
Make some noise with it. Um, when we were talking the other day and kind of prepping for this, you also shared some stories which I thought were really interesting. We're going to talk a bit more about good examples of what good looks like. Excuse me. But also kind of just to help us really realize the importance of all of this, um, of the brand guidelines and the kind of consistency there. You were telling me a story, if you're comfortable to share that, of cases of CEOs and founders when you ignore the guidelines, and then that can kind of lead to public embarrassment or just kind of making mistakes. So where there are real consequences to neglecting the guidelines. And yeah, wondering if you want to share that one example here with everyone. I thought that was really interesting.
Interesting and funny. Okay. The story I mentioned earlier how raw energy had grown and began to create different divisions, not silos, divisions. So, for example, we had raw energy music, we had raw energy promotions, we had raw energy merchandise, anyway, one of the others was raw energy radio.
Hmm.
And every single week we would go into this private broadcast studio owned by an individual who really enjoyed the music that we were producing. And so we would jump on, uh, play music. Chris and I would speak back and forth about the scene and what was happening in the scene, including not just the music scene, but also the skateboard scene and the snowboard scene. And anyway, this particular show online grew incredibly quickly from this would be 98 or 99, somewhere in that range. And just before the dot-com truly, well, not just erupted, but erupted and then burst. But anyway, becoming the dot bomb. But anyway, just prior to that happening, it's, shall we say, glory days, the glory days of securing a shit ton of money, because there was a lot of people interested in the internet. Anyway, the point of the matter is this. Raw Energy Radio grew quickly from 300 local listeners to 3,000 to 30,000 listeners around the world. Very, very, very quickly. We had a huge listenership. And one night I'm sitting with the founder of the studio where we were recording this radio show and live streaming it. Um, and his name was John. And I'm sitting with John, and we're sitting at a bar. Oh, actually, if you're from Toronto, you might know the bar called Betty's. And back then it was called the Betty Ford Clinic. But anyway, we're sitting in Betty's. We're having a beer or several beers and talking about where we can go. And he was deadly curious because he was having no success with any of his other music related shows that he was also live streaming because he knew he had the ability to do this 24/7. He could go online at any moment and broadcast a show. He wasn't storing these particular shows, so people couldn't download them. They had to join us. And this was in the very early infancy of the internet, but when it became known that you could do these sorts of things, a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. We'll get into that in a sec if you want to. But at the end of the day, we're sitting in this bar, we're having a couple of beers, and the guy next to me on my right, John was on my left, the guy on my right turned out to be a lawyer. And the lawyer said, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. You're involved in not only the music industry, but the online industry, which is tech, and we love tech." And he goes, "But proprietary rights are something that really mean a lot to us." And so, "Well, who are you?" He goes, "I'm a lawyer, and I represent a group of investors, and we've got a lot of money to invest in companies like yours." And I said, "Well, it's not my company. The Virtually Canadian Broadcast Network is actually owned by John over here." And John, as fate would have it, turned out to be, well, not just an alcoholic, but also a pretty big cokehead. The point of the matter is, John turned to me and said, tell that mofo, if he wants our attention, he's got to deliver a check in the morning for $10,000. If he doesn't deliver that check for $10,000, I'm not talking to him. I don't need guys like that bugging me. He's a lawyer. I hate lawyers. Anyway, the next day, I'm in his office, John's office, and lo and behold, the doorbell rings because he's operating from a house downtown near the Toronto Sun building, if you know the area, King Street East. And the doorbell rings. It's a courier, and it happens to be someone I know. And because this young man comes out to a lot of our shows. So the point of the matter is, I know this fellow, and I said, John's yelling and screaming, saying, "Don't let him in. He's probably going to cut off the gas. He's going to cut off the electricity." Talk about Scrappy. But at the end of the day, I say, "No, no, no, I know this guy. I'm going to answer the door." So I answer the door. The guy literally hands me a package. It's an envelope. I take the package up to John. John opens it. It's a check made out to cash for $10,000. Okay. What's the first thing that John does with that $10,000?
What?
Literally calls up his dealer and says, "Yeah, I'd like to place an order." Anyway, so to make a long story short here, a couple of months pass. Um, I'm basically negotiating with this lawyer, dealing with this lawyer, visiting with this lawyer and his team pretty well every day until we concluded a deal for $3.2 million to invest in the Virtually Canadian Broadcast Network. And the lawyer said, so long as you've got a business plan written and you've got a set of brand guidelines to accompany that business plan,
Mm.
so that we know where you're operating from, where you're going to on a very professional level. I said, absolutely. That's right up my alley. And that's why I ended up talking to this lawyer practically every day for several months until the documents were done. And within these brand guidelines were things like were words like professional. We intend to be professional. We want to be perceived as professional, not just these young technology gurus who are speaking, uh, quite colloquially in the vernacular of the day, like any street, like the courier would, how I would joke with the courier. The point of the matter is John takes the money, uh, buys I think it was the former Kiss FM studio. So it was a massive 12,000 square foot facility with three separate studios. Um, and he begins to unleash, live streaming shows with my help. So the point of the matter is within this brand guidelines, as I say, is this keyword professional. We have to be presented as professional. So the point, and that's because the lawyer wanted us to be presented as professional. Now, not to say that we had to wear suits. We still had to look cool because we were still part of that dot-com crowd. And at the end of the day, we didn't get away with having bean bags in our lounges. But at the end of the day, what needed to happen next was John, the president CEO of the company, needed to present the company to the investors, B, the media, and C, all the new employees who had been hired, roughly speaking, 30 people who are now employees of this company, courtesy of this investment. So what does John do? He's feeling a little uncomfortable. He doesn't want to speak to people publicly, especially all in one day. First, you're going to speak to these people, then these people, then these people, and deliver incredibly critical messages about how we're going to grow and how we're going to succeed and how we're going to compete in the online market and deliver this great content. And not just music. I mean, it was quite a variety of content that was being produced by all these excellent content hosts and producers. Point of the matter is doesn't John do just a ton of coke, okay, before he goes and delivers these speeches, okay? And this guy is an absolute mess, okay? I mean, you want to talk about Scarface? This guy, if you
Oh
could
my
just
God.
if you could just imagine the scene. I mean, he'd shown up, I would say at like 9 o'clock in the morning in a suit. He was ready to deliver these speeches, but then he goes and does this ton of cocaine. Okay, shows up, uh, and now his tie is over here. He's
Oh my
dribbling out of his nose. He's slurring like, ah, happy to meet you guys. I'm really glad you're here. I've got these great ideas. And he just goes off. And as you know, as anybody would in that state of mind. And I mean, this guy was nonstop blabber for a good half an hour in each of the presentations that he made. And at the end of them all, everyone was so confused. How could this guy have ever gotten this $3.5 million investment? This guy's a mess. This guy's out of control. Like this guy's going to take us into the future? No way. He was
wow.
not believable. He was not trustworthy. He didn't present in alignment with the brand guidelines, that's for sure. But that's a great example of in the brand guidelines, you will see uh, that the brand guidelines are there to ensure the consistency of messaging from not only the speeches delivered by the top level executives, but
Mm.
also, as I said earlier, by the content within the press releases or the content that's provided on the websites. All these things that need to mesh, they need to be aligned. And the only way they can be aligned, is that my dog going off? I guess the mailman's being attacked. Anyway, so there's a good example of where you need consistency in your alignment, and John unfortunately didn't. He lost his job. Well, actually, he didn't lose his job. He got bought out of his job about 6 months later, when they finally came to an agreement and literally gave him a check for $2 million to leave the office,
Wow.
go away. And he did. And there were many examples. Just for fun, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, uh, Google .com businesses that went bankrupt, and you will find an incredible array of companies that raised millions upon millions, if not billions, especially in America, billions of dollars, and had lavish parties and flew around the world in their own private jets, but ultimately were unsuccessful in delivering revenue and therefore ultimately had to declare bankruptcy. There's many great examples of dot-coms that should have been successful that weren't, because there were a lot of people doing a lot of things that
Yeah.
really weren't related at all to the brand.
Wow. There are so many I wish we had more time, Graham, because there are so many cases I'm sure we could go through. Um, I think we'll jump ahead just in the interest of time.
Sure.
Although, maybe we'll have a follow-on session another time because I would love to hear some more of these examples. I'm sure others would too.
I
Um,
have a
I
lot of
guess
stories.
right there, yeah, there's a lot to share. So moving away, I guess, from some of the examples, just in kind of looking forward to, how then does one kind of apply the best practices? We were talking about this the other day as well. In these brand guidelines, there are so many different important components.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a lot of them today. Is there a section or a piece that people absolutely need to get right, that they really need to focus and concentrate on?
Without a doubt, yeah. There's one critical area I really reinforce when I'm talking to clients. Specifically, I tell them they have to get their positioning right. They have to, within the four core elements of the offering, within marketing, we talk about the offering and there's the product, what you're selling, the price, because there's, are you going to be perceived as the Rolls Royce out there or the Volkswagen? No offense to Volkswagen, but I'm just simply saying, is it going to be
Hmm.
that level? And then, of course, there's the promotion, the third P, and then there's positioning. And that's how people perceive your company. So how do they perceive you? And it's really, really critical because if you're speaking to a specific audience, they have to perceive that you are going to deliver what they expect from that brand, from seeing either that logo or hearing that tagline or hearing that guy speak or that gal speak at a trade show or at a conference or a news conference, anything like that. Positioning is absolutely critical when it comes to the brand guidelines. There's actually a component in my set of brand guidelines anyway, related to positioning and what people can expect. And it is part and parcel with the brand, what's called the brand promise. So it is important. That is what is critical there. And it is important also to recognize that there are many great brands that actually evolve because they're not afraid to refresh or even rebrand. But refresh is a good word. Go back and take a look at those original brand guidelines that got morphed into this brand Bible. But ultimately, they're not afraid to look back and say, do we really have it right? Or could we do more if we just simply changed a few words here? And I'm not saying anything out of the ordinary because there are some great, great brands that have done a refresh and been very successful. I think I mentioned Starbucks the other day. But the other one that comes to mind, just off the top of my head, McDonald's. McDonald's used to pretty well appeal to kids, if you will. And I think nowadays they've done a really great job of rebranding. And I'm not just talking about the introduction of McCafes, but they've really done a great job of making it a comfortable place to not only bring your children, but also satisfy the needs of the adult in the group as well. And not be scared by their Ronald McDonald clowns that they had back in the day. There's another just talk about branding that you'll all probably recognize because of the campaign that's going on right now. It's massive, and that's the Old Spice brand.
Hmm.
Like, and when I was young,
Hmm.
my dad used Old Spice, and I remember him doing that kind of thing, splashing on this aftershave. And nowadays, it is a must-have brand that has a variety of different products. Yet the brand is Old Spice. The brand name hasn't changed, but it is a must-have brand for a lot of young people right now.
I remember
Does,
the Man and a Horse, and
right.
they brought it back about 10 years ago. We are running close on time, so much still to cover. So I do want to take a question here from the audience because we've had a.
Awesome.
So Craig, if you want to, I don't know if you want to turn on your speaker or I can read your question on your behalf. Go ahead.
Okay, so hi there, and thank you for taking my question. It's Craig Wigley here. Um, and Graham actually, and you almost just asked the same question as what I wanted to ask, unfortunately, but maybe Graham's got a little bit of different twist to it. So I'm wondering, for a small startup business that has little or no budget, what are the three or what are the most important aspects of
Mm,
branding to consider?
Above and beyond the actual vision, because that can vary completely. Okay, so above and beyond vision, we want to be seen as a globally recognized brand 10 years down the road. Forget that for a second. In terms of your question, the mission statement, you have to be on mission. You have to identify some specific goals that are contained. I'm going to say in a very flowery way, but they're going to be contained in that we intend to. We intend to deliver uh, great content that will appeal to a young audience uh, while focusing on migratory bird patterns. Okay, something like that. Okay,
mhm,
so your mission statement is critical. Your brand promise is absolutely critical. In other words, when people think of your brand. They're going to expect that you are going to deliver something that they need and they value and they trust you'll do something on time, you know, to spec, if you know what I mean. I'm sure you do. So the brand promise is absolutely critical to delivering in their minds anyway. Yeah, I'm contacting the right company. These are the guys I need to speak to because I just from their branding alone, I know they're going to be able to answer my questions and deliver the product that I expect from those people as well. So in terms of the mission, like what we intend to do, then there's the perception, like how we are perceived and that is delivered, quite frankly, in the brand promise. And then, of course, you've got something called the brand character. And the brand character, again, I've mentioned it, I think I mentioned it way back in the beginning, but it's how you want your employees, for example, most notably, to be perceived. So are they perceived as intelligent? And when we go through brand character, we don't simply say, well, I want my employees to be perceived as intelligent people, but not arrogant or not condescending, but intelligent. So you are balancing, if you will, some of these adjectives that are important, so that you can roll out a strategy based on because all businesses are based on people, quite frankly. So, and what these people say and do is important because it reflects on you and your brand that you've established, you know, and uh, when speaking to these people that are exuding this brand character, are they doing so in an appealing manner, or are they pissing you off? You know, so it's important to deliver a brand character that can be adapted. And this goes to training as well. When you're training your employees, you can whip out the brand guidelines and actually and have a correlation, quite frankly, between the training sessions and the brand guidelines. I mean, it's a twist on the brand guidelines, but I would certainly have the executives and the employees read the brand guidelines. And when it comes to brand character, they'll recognize that they're expected to be saying things that are intelligent, but not in an aggressive kind of way, not in an annoying kind of way, and not in a condescending way. And what I said, But the other thing too is you might want to say, I want my employees to be passionate. They need to be passionate about what they're talking about, and not just whimsically pulling off examples of their great success that they've had with this particular product or what other people have had. But they need to be passionate. So they're fun to deal with. And so a lot of people, we talk about experiential marketing. Well, there's a really good example. If you go into a Starbucks, that's what you get. You get a great barista who not only just knows his coffee, but knows what you want as a person, as a human, why you're there. You want to have a really nice, decent experience dealing with an intelligent person who is appealing to you in based on the knowledge that they have, you know, and is passionate about what they're doing. Anyway, so those are three things that I would focus on. Uh, if that answers your question, Craig.
Very much so. Thank you, Alexander, for taking my question, and thank you, Graeme, for answering it for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Craig. I think these are so much more fun for us too when we get to have other people on the line. I have to say I'm very disappointed because we are at time, and I know we're starting to lose some folks already. So I know it's too bad because we have so much that we can keep talking about. So I guess I guess we'll wrap it up for today. But again, I really want to encourage all of you to check out those three things that we will send out as soon as possible today, worst case tomorrow. Please do check your junk and spam folders. Unfortunately, sometimes this will come from Consulta podcast or Consulta events. I can't recall, but check it out there. We get trapped in the junk mailbox sometime. But again, because that will include some links that I think will be helpful for you. One is definitely to book some time with Graeme. I'm sure Graeme will speak on your behalf, but Craig and others, if you'd like to, I suggest you book some time with Graeme and just have a chat about your startup, your company, your enterprise, and see what are some tips that you can work on together. And the other thing is the guide that we have put together. We'd love for you to have access to that. That's about 20 pages. Our new guide is called From Mixed Messages to Brand Consistency, a 90-day playbook for alignment. So that's going to walk you through with some really clear steps what to do in month 1, 2, and 3 in order to kind of review and reset your brand. And these guides that we're creating are kind of intended as a do-it-yourself. So, Craig, for you and for others, if we don't all have the time and budget to necessarily engage professionals, especially not in that $100,000 exercise that Graeme was talking about earlier. So
Right.
we're, designing a lot of these tools so that you can kind of tackle them on your own or with your teams. And then, of course, we're always happy to have Graeme and others kind of supplement and give a hand and kind of advise through that process. So check those out as well. So I guess that's going to be it for today. And I really appreciate all of you joining. Those of you, looks like there were some folks live who made it on LinkedIn as well. So this was a fun experiment for us. Great to have those of you here with us in Zoom. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back with Debbie, who's going to talk to us about making the most of your IT teams, which is a pretty interesting topic. And so looking forward to that as well. Hope you'll all join us for that. And in the meantime, again, wishing you a great rest of your afternoon. And please come back and spend some time with Graeme and talk some more about your own business. And we hope to see you again and to see your business wildly successful off doing whatever it is that it does. Graeme, thank you so much again. And to everyone else who is here today, great to see you all.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.